Hello, welcome to the Analyst Inside Cricket with me, Simon Hughes.
And I'm Simon Mann.
And it's just over a month to go now to the Ashes, eagerly awaited, of course. And we're going to talk Test cricket today. We're going to talk England Test cricket and England Test cricketers. Simon, over to you.
Yeah, we are, because at the weekend I was chatting over dinner about Shane Warne, and my daughter said to me, "Is Shane Warne Australia's greatest ever cricketer?" And I said, well, he's probably in the top two. There's someone called Donald Bradman. And when I talk about, Donald Bradman playing before the Second World War, she said, that can't be of any relevance. It was cricket. It wasn't much cop in those days, and players have improved enormously and all that sort of stuff. And I said, well, no, I think because he's a massive outlier. He averaged 99. Anyway, I gave her the spiel. And then she said to me, who is England's greatest ever men's Test cricketer? And I said, I thought, I'm not sure. I'm not absolutely sure who England's greatest Test cricketer is. You could talk about, who's England's greatest batter, who's England's greatest bowler, fast bowler, spin bowler. It's easier to do that, isn't it? And you can have a good debate about that. But to talk about who is the greatest England Test cricketer, this is men of all time, is not so easy. And you have to think about all sorts of different criteria. So what I did was I bunged it all into Chat GPT, the paid version. My wife has the paid version, so you can like much greater database.
BBC salary doesn't stretch for you having the paid version. Poor you.
Can't even pay for my internet connection. So that's what I did. I put it into Chat GPT and I gave it certain prompts. And I was thinking about this. I was thinking what about other countries? And let's do a quick quiz here, Yoz, because I suddenly thought, well, what about other countries? Well, actually, it's a bit more obvious who the best cricketer from the other main Test playing countries are. Now, I had a view of that. I just thought about it for a little bit, 5 minutes or whatever, and came up with the names that I thought, and then I put it into Chat GPT as well. And actually, bingo, all the ones that I thought of were the ones that came up on Chat GPT. So let's just do that quick quiz now, Yoz. I haven't told you what Chat GPT said. I haven't told you what I thought, but I asked you before we went on air to give me your best cricketer for each of the other Test playing countries. So let's do a quick quiz then. India.
Tendulkar,
that's who I went for, and that's who Chat GPT went for. South Africa.
Not totally cut and dry, but Callis. I mean, obviously for statistical reasons.
Yeah, that's who I went for, and that's who Chat GPT went for as well. Australia, well, we kind of touched on this already with the Warne versus Bradman.
Yeah, Bradman, yeah.
Bradman, yeah. Pakistan. I just thought I had to think about this one for a little. I had to think about this one for a little bit longer, but then I came up with a name, and Chat GPT came up with the same name.
I've got to say Imran Khan.
Oh, Imran Khan, that's interesting. Okay, that's where we slightly disagree, because I thought Wasim Akram, and they said Imran Khan's a close second, but Wasim Akram, best men's Test cricketer for Pakistan, 104 tests, 414 wickets at 23, nearly 3,000 runs at nearly 23 batting average as well. So so it's interesting actually. You did stop and had to think a little bit about Pakistan. Sri Lanka.
Well, I'm torn between Murali and Sangakkara, actually, because, I mean, although Murali has got the most Test wickets of all time, he was a freak and he couldn't bat, and Sangakkara was captain and obviously an incredible batter and keeper. So I'm going Sangakkara, actually, for Sri Lanka.
Okay, well, I'm going Murali, and Chat GPT went Murali as well for that. New Zealand?
Richard Hadley,
yeah. Bingo. And then West Indies.
Well, most people would say Sobers. As a fairly logical answer. I think Viv Richards runs him close.
I went for Sobers, and so did Chat GPT as well. And they actually said that Malcolm Marshall for game impact ran Gary Sobers close. Obviously, Viv was just phenomenal, towering presence, and dominated our formative years, didn't they, as cricket watchers and players to some extent.
I still have nightmares about it. But the thing is, in where you touched on something there, criteria. So you say ChatGPT then went and looked at Malcolm Marshall and his match impact. So I think that's an important area that statistics don't necessarily reveal.
Okay, well, the thing is, you can do that with ChatGPT. You can give it various prompts, and I actually did this twice. So first time I talked about things like match impact and statistics and home and away and the quality of the opposition. I also talked about popular opinion as well. And popular opinion gave me not wildly diverging lists for the best England players, but there was some divergence between the list with popular opinion chucked in, but also then just pure brutal statistical analysis. And that's the one I'm going to go with for the top 10. And we're going to come up with a name. You'll all be thinking, well, who's my name? Who is the best England cricketer, pound for pound, of all time? And look, it's not definitive, but it's just an interesting exercise to do and just to have a think about. We had Jared Kimber on, didn't we, earlier in the summer, who wrote the book about the top best 50 batters of all time. He listed them from 1 to 50. And that's kind of what we're doing with a bit of statistical help. But also, I'm going to get you, Yoz, to do your top 10, because I thought delved into this.
You're going to put me against the world's largest collection of computers, Chat GPT, those vast sort of factories of, energy that are all churning out all this stuff. And that's against me. Thanks.
Yeah. So we've got one of the great cricket minds against the computer, basically. That's what we're doing today. And just see what you come up with, what you think a top 10, and then perhaps a top 5 or a top 1, 2, 3, but certainly a top 1. So we're going to go to a top 1, and we won't reveal it until the end, or you can reveal yours as you go through. And let's see how your sort of intuition, your sort of knowledge of the game. You've studied a lot of the history of the game as well. You've written books about it. See where you come up with, and where that sort of computer brutality, if you like, that churn that you talked about, what they come up with. So, okay, so let's get going. We've done our other nations, and I think there wasn't much debate, was there? There was a little bit of debate here and there, but there wasn't much debate. But perhaps there will be some debate with England's best ever cricketer. I mean, you're talking about 100 and how many years of Test cricket? You're talking about 150 years of Test cricket. So you're going right back in the day to the 19th century. Some great players over the years. Some great players in the modern game as well. And also you have something, often you have recency bias. I was talking to someone the other evening about this, and so this idea that we're going to do it on a Tuesday, record a podcast, and he said, well, Joe Root. It's got to be Joe Root. So you get that recency bias. And look, Joe Root is a fabulous player, and we'll see where he ends up when he's finished his career. And that's the other thing as well. There are still potentially 1 or 2 players who might make the list who are still playing and can still have an impact on the game. But as we stand on the 14th of November, 2025, who, Yoz, is in your list, top 10 of England best ever men's Test cricketers?
Well, before I start, I would like to say
cliffhanger.
One thing, that criteria is important, obviously.
Yeah.
And it's not just about statistics.
No.
Obviously, statistics are important. But for me, cricket, for everyone, cricket is a game of bat and ball. And so, for me, to make the greatest Test cricketer, you need to have both skills, in my mind, or one skill so dominant, as in Bradman's case, that it eclipses everybody else. But, cricket is a game of bat and ball. And so I've used certain criteria about their other skills. So if they're mainly a batter, how good are they at bowling as well? How much impact did they have as a bowler? Obviously, all-rounders perhaps have a slight advantage. And also, leadership qualities, not necessarily just captaincy, but also how much influence they can have in their team. And clearly things like captaincy, win ratio is important as well, if they have been captain. And if they haven't, then, how much influence have they had on results? How much sort of percentage of the team runs have they made, and so on. So there's a few other kind of nuances, I suppose, to just the bare statistics. And so that's what I've used in my criteria.
And I would say, Yoz, just before you say, and I would say as well, I put those prompts into Chat GPT as well. I didn't just say who is England's best men's Test cricketer. I say consider things like pure stats, the degree of difficulty, i.e., quality of the opposition that they were playing against at the time, match impact, how they got on home and away. Could they do it in all conditions? So there were other criteria as well, and I agree with you. You can't just say just purely look at the stats. There has to be more than that. And you could say that there are 4 or 5 prompts there that I came up with. You could say, well, there are another 5 sort of nuanced prompts that you could put in as well. What I would say is captaincy impact is quite a difficult one to analyze, isn't it, in a team context?
Well, it is, but obviously you can go on the basic one, which is win ratio. Who's been the most successful?
Yeah, but if you've got a great
there's
team,
an element of luck about that, of course, but that is about talent as well.
Yeah, but if you've got a great team, I mean, you could argue that with that great Australian side, probably half a dozen of them might have captained the side, and they might have done just as well because they had so many great players. So it's hard, it's harder to judge. The captaincy impact is harder to judge. Anyway, okay, right. Let's get down to it. Let's get down to your top 10 then, Yoz.
Okay, well, I wanted, just for the sake of balance, I did want to have a spinner somewhere, a spinner who can have an impact. And I've chosen as my 10th greatest England Test cricketer, I've chosen Derek Underwood, deadly as he was known, because he took 297 Test wickets in 86 Tests, so he's England's most successful spinner. He could have played more Tests. He was obviously he joined Packer and also joined the Rebel Tours in the early 80s, so he could have played a lot more Tests actually. But he's England's leading spinner by wickets taken. He averaged 25 with the ball in Tests, and actually his economy rate was 2.1, which is very low, obviously, for a spinner as well. And why I've chosen him is because he had great longevity. He played for 20 years. Not Test cricket, but first-class cricket. He played more than 20 years. I mean, he actually in first-class cricket, took nearly 2,500 wickets. And he was the youngest ever to take 100 wickets in a season. He took 100 wickets for Kent in the 1963 season, aged 18. Amazing. But what I liked about him was that he was very, very reliable in any conditions. Obviously, he was deadly, which is why he was known as that, when the pitch was drying, playing on uncovered pitches. But he was also very, very accurate on very flat, easy batting pitches as well. And England could just trust him to bowl one end and hold an end up, regardless of the conditions, regardless of the opposition, regardless of the country. And he bowled that fast spin as well. He was almost like a medium pacer bowling cutters, and he really varied his pace. So he was quite an unusual bowler in many ways, but also incredibly accurate and, very successful. So I have him as my 10th. I know he's not going to get the vote. He probably won't even be regarded by Chat GPT at all. Tell me, is he in the Chat GPT top 10?
I'm not going to tell you, Yoz. I'm going to wait till the end, like I promised everyone, before revealing the Chat GPT top 10. One thing I would say about Derek Underwood, he was he was part of my youth and growing up. And if there was a wet wicket, he was absolutely unbelievable bowler. Did the fact that the way he bowled though mean that his stats are a bit skewed by playing on uncovered pitches, and he had so much success on them that you feel that's kind of like he was helped more than other players from other eras because of the pitches they were playing on? Like, for example, spinners these days, they probably love to play on bowl on uncovered pitches, wouldn't they?
I mean, he didn't have DRS, and he only got 8% of his wickets LBW, whereas Graham Swan got something like 25% of his wickets LBW because DRS gives spinners so many more leg befores. So, he was at a disadvantage in many ways. Batters in those days just used their pad and kicked it away, and he probably could have got a lot more LBWs. So, swings and roundabouts.
Yeah. Okay. Good argument. Right. On to number 9.
So number 9 is Geoffrey Boycott's favourite cricketer of all time, Fred Trueman, who was the first fast bowler to take, first any bowler to take 300 Test wickets. 307 Test wickets he finished with in 67 Tests at an amazing average of 21.57. So very few bowlers of any kind have averaged in Test cricket under 23, really. And only the greats like Marshall and Garner and so on have averaged under 21. So Trueman around that figure, 21.57 for his test wickets. And, again, a very talented bowler in all conditions. He could be fast, he could bowl cutters, he could swing the ball. He bounced out the tail probably before many bowlers did. And he just had that fantastic kind of uplifting character as well on the field. He was a warrior, wasn't he, for England? And so, he was such a sort of talismanic cricketer and the first to 300 Test wickets. So he was an icon of the game. So he's my ninth.
Yeah. Well, he was the greatest fast bowler that ever drew breath, wasn't he? According to him. I've just been reading.
All right,
I've just been reading Richard Whitehead's excellent book about the 1954-55 Ashes in Australia. No, I mean, so much fantastic detail in there. I absolutely loved it. But of course, one of the things about that successful Ashes tour, Fred was left out, wasn't he? Because he was seen as trouble.
Yeah.
And that was the West Indies tour the previous year, where he was the finger was pointed at him for various on-field and off-field shenanigans, which he denied.
It's interesting, actually. That's a good point. And funnily enough, I mean, at least four in my list of 10 are, sort of tempestuous characters who've had their tangles with authority and occasional illegality. And, maybe it goes hand in hand with being a warrior on the field is sometimes you're a bit erratic off it.
Yeah. Okay. So Derek Underwood and Fred. Right. Okay. What about number 8?
Number 8 is Wally Hammond, who was obviously an iconic figure from the 1930s. In fact, in many ways, he would have been the greatest cricketer that ever lived in his era, but for Bradman, because he and Bradman were sort of neck and neck in the 1930s for achievements. Whenever Hammond made a double hundred, Bradman would get a 250, or whenever Hammond got a 300, Bradman would get a bit more. So he was sort of almost in Bradman's shadow for most of his career. But in 85 tests, he made 7,249 runs at an average of 58.45. and 2200s, the leading England 100 maker until Alistair Cook overtook that figure. So, he was the leading England test run 100 maker for 50, 60, 70 years, amazingly. He also took a few test wickets, actually, as well. I mean, again, he was a slightly tricky character who had a bit of a violent temper and would go off radar a little bit, but fantastic player. I mean, obviously very commanding player, cavalier type player, very dominant batter. Would have been wonderful to watch.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
And an astonishing record, average 58.45. I mean, that's staggering, isn't it?
He also averaged 51.85 against Australia, which you might feel is the gold standard. We talked on an earlier podcast, didn't we, about Australia being the dominant cricketing force for as long as international cricket has been played, primarily Test cricket going back into the 19th century. So that is, you talk about putting prompts in, degree of difficulty, quality of opposition. There's something to consider. He averaged 51.85 against Australia. So Wally Hammond in at number 8. What about number 7?
Number 7 is Len Hutton.
The great Sir Leonard.
Sir Leonard.
The great Sir Leonard.
Another Yorkshireman. 79 tests, nearly 7,000 test runs. Another fantastic average, 56.67. Still holds a record for England for highest individual score. Is 364 in 1938 against Australia at the Oval. Actually, playing an astonishing first-class record as well. Played 519 first-class matches for Yorkshire, 40,000 runs, averaged 55 in first-class cricket, 129 hundreds. And, of course, he was also famous as one of the only men who's won the Ashes as captain, both home and away. because they won it in '53. They sort of regained the Ashes in '53 at the Oval, and he was captain in that series. And then, according to what well documented in Richard Whitehead's book, 1954-5 to Australia under Hutton, they won again, even though he put them in Brisbane, conceded 1,000.
Indeed. And just looking at his average against Australia as well, it really does stand up. He averaged 56.46, which is just a fraction below his overall average. And he played 27 of his test matches against Australia. Actually, that tour of 54-5, he was kind of coming towards the end there, and he didn't have a great time of it on the field. He didn't actually make that many runs. There were some quite low-scoring games. But yeah, if you win the Ashes in Australia, you achieve legendary status, I think. So yeah, so Len Hutton is in there at where are we? Number 7. Anything else to say?
I was very happy to have got his autograph, actually. It was my benefit year in 1991. And so in 1990, I went round with a large portrait of Lords, collecting up as many England captains that I could find to sign this big sort of picture of the Lord's Pavilion. And there was a few that I got at the time. R.E.S. Wyatt was one from the 1930s. Norman Yardley, I think he was another one. Freddie Brown, from the 50s. They were still alive. And I got Hutton. He came to Lord's for a match at the end of, I think it was 1989 or early 1990. He came to Lord's for a match, and someone said he's watching Yorkshire in the hospitality box. I went to hospitality box, got his signature. He was really polite and lovely, and he died about 6 months later. He died in 1990, quite young, age 74 actually. So one of my proudest autograph mementos actually that I've got. And
where is it? You still got it?
Yeah, no, I've still got it. Actually. Captaincy didn't have the greatest record, which is why I've marked him down a little bit, because captaincy for me, if you had the chance to be captain, is important. His captaincy record, 47% win ratio, 11 out of 23. So he did well in the Ashes, but perhaps not so well elsewhere.
Okay, so where are we up to? That was 10, 9, 8, 7. Number 6.
So number 6 is, a lot of people maybe would have him as their number 1, actually. Maybe Chat GPT does. Jack Hobbs. Sir Jack Hobbs, known as the Master, understandably, really, because of that staggering amount of runs in first-class cricket, 61,760 runs. So the most ever made by a batsman just in first-class cricket, averaged of 50. In tests, he averaged 56.94, so almost 57, 1,500s, 12 in the Ashes in his 61 tests, 5,400 runs. I mean, a phenomenal player, a phenomenal survivor, a guy who changed the game in the way that he played. He played a very sort of elegant style of batting, but very versatile. Hit all round the wicket. Sort of just was incredibly adaptable cricketer who was, I suppose, his most famous innings was in the 1926 Ashes, which was, I think, a 0-0 draw until the final test at the Oval, and it was a real treacherous pitch. And he and Herbert Sutcliffe put on a really important 100 stand for the first wicket in the final innings, in the fourth innings, the run chase, chasing a difficult target on a very tricky pitch with rain had fallen overnight, and on a sticky dog, Hobbs made this incredible 100. And of course, he was part of England's greatest opening partnership with Herbert Sutcliffe. So he goes in at number 6, but, why I didn't put him in the top 3, say, was because, to go back to my original criteria, bowling and batting, for me, is important in a cricketer. To have some kind of role with your lesser skill, if you like, is important, or significant to me anyway. So because he didn't take many wickets, didn't really bowl, although he was a majestic and incredibly prolific batsman, that's why he's not in my top 5.
Yeah, close on 200 centuries in his first class career.
199 hundreds, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's phenomenal, isn't it? I mean, he also had the situation in his international career. He made his debut in 1908 and then had a 6-year break because of the First World War. So he didn't play for England between 1914 and 1920. So he played 1908 to 1914 and then 1920 to 1930. And 42 of his test matches were against Australia, 18 test matches against South Africa, and 2 test matches against the West Indies. 42 of his test matches against Australia, and he averaged 54.26. So again, that's kind of like degree of difficulty that, you know, you don't necessarily play at home to some of the lesser nations that we see now, or some of the emerging nations where you might get plunder some relatively weak bowling. So there is Jack Hobbs in at number 6 for Yozza. What about
a quick break?
We can do. Right, we've reached top 5 time for you, Yozzy. Your top 5 England Test cricketers, men of all time. We went with Test cricket because the problem is for players in the past, they didn't play one-day cricket. So the likes of Hobbs, for example, and Hammond, who you have in your list, and Fred as well, you had in your list. They didn't play white ball or short form cricket. But I think you would have had Butler, wouldn't you, in your top 10 if I'd allowed that, if it'd been England men's cricketers of all time?
Yeah, I would have had Butler in. I mean, look at his record in one-day cricket. So he's played 391 one-day matches for England, either 50 over or 20 over. 391 games, 9,600 runs, with an averaging around 40, at 1200s in short form cricket, 11 in ODIs and 1 T20 international, and a strike rate of between 115 for ODIs and 149 for T20. But, you know, it's impact, isn't it? It's the way he's dominated bowlers, invented new shots, pioneered a way of batting, hit sixes for fun, dominated all bowlers, won the World T20, of course, with England in Australia, also been part of that World Cup winning 50 over side in 2019, and just totally changed the game. And of course, he says he was influenced by A.B. de Villiers, who himself was an extraordinary cricketer. But Butler's taken it onto another level in one-day cricket, I think. And so he deserves, if the criteria was just England's greatest cricketers, not Test cricketers, because his Test record is modest, then I would have had Butler in there.
Okay, right. Let's move on to your top 5 then. Top 5 England men's Test cricketers of all time. Who's 5th on your list?
Well, I had trouble separating these two. Hobbs as number 6 with my number 5, which is Jimmy Anderson, because they both are, peerless in their particular discipline. I just gave Anderson a bit more than Hobbs, a couple more points, because bowling's a bit harder than batting, maybe, and his longevity is extraordinary. So 704 test wickets, 188 tests. How can a fast bowler play 188 tests? It's quite extraordinary. He's bowled 40,000 balls for England in Test cricket. It's just incredible, isn't it? With an average of 26.45, so very respectable average. It's not quite in the top bracket, but in terms of 22, 21. And we've even got a couple of cricketers now, in that 21 bracket, haven't we? We've got Jasprit Bumrah, we've got KG Rabada, taking their wickets. I think Scott Boland actually takes his wickets at around about 21. But most fast bowlers would be in that sort of 25 to 30 area, and obviously Jimmy is in that spot. Actually, don't forget, he's also taken 269 one-day wickets for England as well.
But they don't count, Niels.
I know they don't count, but it's sort of they don't count in this particular story. But I think it's worth just remembering that. And first-class wickets over 1,000. I think he'll be the last bowler to take 1,000 first-class wickets, because it's just too hard to play that long anymore. Anyway, so I think he just shades Jack Hobbs into 5th place, but it's marginal. And again, I sort of don't give them maximum points because they don't have that much impact with their alternative discipline. Anderson can't bat, and Hobbs couldn't really bowl.
Okay, fine. Right. So we're on to the top four. Who's your number four then?
So my number four is Joe Root. And I don't really probably need to explain too much about that. I mean, 158 tests, 13,543 runs.
We've done about 20 podcasts on him, Yoz, and we can't think of anything new to say about him. We got to that sort of level, haven't we?
We run out of superlatives, don't we? Average of 51 in Test cricket, 39 hundreds. He's insatiable. It's extraordinary performance, and not looking tired, is he? Of course, he still, as David Warner and many others will mention, hasn't made 100 in Australia, and that perhaps is slightly held against him. That's why, again, I haven't had him in the top three. Also, because of his poor captaincy record, obviously disappointing. I think his captaincy win ratio is only 42%. So, disappointing, really. Don't forget, he also takes Test wickets. He's taken 73 Test wickets at a fairly high average, but he's taken them and he's willing to bowl. And of course, he's also caught 213. So I've factored fielding into this evaluation a little bit as well. Fielding influence and consistency and perhaps brilliance is an aspect that you can factor into being a great Test cricketer. So Root's sound. I wouldn't give him top marks for being his fielding because he catches most of them, but not all. I'd say he's safe rather than spectacular as a fielder, but he gets a few points for that. So he's in fourth place.
Right. Okay. We're on to the top three. It's an interesting list so far, Yoz. I'm fascinated to know who's going to be
interesting. You're implying that Chat GPT is way off, or I'm way off, or something. Anyway,
I'm not commenting on that just yet, Yoz. Right. let's have your top three.
Right. Well, I actually haven't been able to separate people in second place. Two very similar cricketers, actually. So I'll give you them in alphabetical order. In second equal place is Ian Botham. Of course, England's, is he England's greatest all-rounder? Well, we'll find out in a minute, won't we? I mean, fantastic cricketer. I was lucky to play with, unfortunate to play against. 102 tests, 383 Test wickets. So he was the leading Test wicket taker in the world for some time, and he took those wickets at 28, which is pretty decent. But also added to that 14 Test hundreds at a batting average of 33. Probably could have had a better batting average, but because of the energy put into his bowling, he perhaps didn't have quite as much sort of concentration and mental stamina to play long innings with the bat. So, probably his batting suffered from his prowess as a bowler in a way. But he was a bowler who could take wickets in any conditions. He swung the ball both ways. He had pace. He could bowl quick. He invented slower balls. He was one of the first people to bowl slower balls, and I copied his slower ball, having seen it on TV, and actually once got him out with it, which was perhaps one of the highlights of my career. 27 5-wicket hauls and a phenomenal record in the Ashes. So powerful in the Ashes that Australia wanted him to be one of them, and they don't often say that about the Poms. And they almost sort of kowtowed to him. His force of personality got him as many wickets as his skill, especially against Australia. So, with that in mind, not a very successful captain. In fact, he captained 10 tests for England, didn't win a single one of them, but they were all against the West Indies, who were a fantastic team in that sort of early 80s era, and he was too young to be captain. So a few negative points in a sense, because his captaincy was was poor. He wasn't a great manager. He expected everybody to be as good as him, really, almost. And he was a bit intolerant, actually, I'd say. But as a force on the field, almost peerless. So he's definitely there as my equal second.
So a couple of points there. One, that comes back to my point about captaincy, that a lot of it depends on who you've got in your team, who you're playing against in terms of your captaincy record. And he came up against a fantastic West Indies side. And we talked about other players, the likes of Hobbs and Hutton and perhaps, and Hammond. Actually, the criteria is, how did he get on against the best team in the world? And it was Australia largely in their day. Ian Botham didn't have a great record against West Indies, did he? He really struggled against them. He found it difficult to get. Didn't make 100 against the West Indies. Did take some wickets at times against them, but he didn't have. Overall, his real successes came against Australia. Okay, so you're going to go second equal, are you? So you're not going to do top three. You're going to go who's equal with Ian Botham then?
W.G. Grace.
W.G. Grace. Okay.
Well, William Gilbert Grace. Obviously from the 1890s, a completely different era, same kind of cricketer, very dominant with personality as well as ability. I mean, it's just interesting to look at his W.G. Grace's overall record, actually. In first-class cricket, 54,000 runs, 124 hundreds. And what people don't realise is he could bowl as well. He bowled these sort of crafty leg spinners from round the wicket mostly. And in that time, in his, whatever it was, 30-year career, 2,809 wickets at an average of 18. Now, I know it was a different era and they were playing on uncovered pitches. So, maybe that shouldn't be taken into consideration. He didn't play all that many test matches because there weren't that many at the time. But in the ones that he did, he made a couple of hundreds. He averaged just under 40 in test cricket. So, that was pretty good on those sorts of pitches. And actually, he changed the game as well because he was the first batter who really played forward as well as back. And he was very tall, so he was very dominant, sort of intimidating player to face. And because he was able to play right back, but also right forward, he could get to the pitch of the ball and drive the ball, whereas most of the players from his generation were more back foot players who worked the ball or pulled it or cut it, but he could actually drive it as well. So he was a bit of sort of Kevin Peterson in there, actually, in the way that he played. And obviously a dominant figure, captain. He has the best win ratio of any England captain, 61% in that time. And he only played against Australia. So a good Ashes record and just, such an iconic figure that you can't ignore with an all-round game. He was also a good fielder, although he wasn't the greatest mover because he was a big, heavy chap, big, tall, bit overweight probably towards the end of his life. He was a very sound fielder. And in a way, he sort of incited the idea of the Ashes because knowing the laws of the game very intimately, in that famous test match in 1882, when the Australian number 7 wandered out of his ground to do some gardening, W.G. Grace whipped off the bails and ran him out. And the umpire was obliged to give him out, even though it seemed to be against the spirit of the game. The decision was upheld. That stirred the wrath of Frederick the Demon Spofforth. England got bowled out for 77, chasing 85, and the idea of the Ashes was born.
Shades of Alex Carey and Johnny Bairstow. So England were at it a long time before Alex Carey was at it. Well, we've had our say on that. We thought Johnny Bairstow should have stayed in his ground. There we go. Right. Okay. So that's interesting. I mean, the other thing about Grace as well is that he was I think the point about him is you look at his pure figures. They're not fantastic, are they? But they're just so much better than anyone else he was playing with in his day. So he was the champion cricketer of his day. So you look back and you think, well, W.G. Grace, how good was he? How would he get on in the modern game? Which is almost that feeling. How would he get on in the modern game? Well, it's an impossible one to answer. But he was so much better than anybody else that was playing over the course of his career. Okay, you'd have had bad days, etc., and let some low scores, but other people were struggling even more. So WG, now this is interesting. Also, we've got to number one. I bet there are a few people out there thinking, hold on, we've been through all of England's great cricketers. Who is going to be the number one? Now, I think I can guess who it is going to be, but I'm not going to steal your thunder. So tell us, who is England's greatest ever cricketer? I'll tell you what I agree. I'll tell you whether this is the person I thought you were going to come up with.
Well, the greatest ever Test cricketer for England, in my head, is Benjamin Stokes. And the reason why I give him that is because, firstly, he's one of only 3 cricketers in Test cricket who's made 7,000 runs and taken 200 odd wickets. And the other 2 are Callis and Sobers. So pretty good company. And he just has that amazing warrior spirit and leadership ability, tactical acumen and man management and ability with bat and ball. Obviously, one of the criteria of being an all-rounder, a genuine all-rounder, is that your batting average is higher than your bowling average, and it is in his case. His batting average is 36, 7,032 runs at 36, 1,400s, the same as Botham. He averages 41 in one-day internationals as well, interestingly. And in bowling, 230 wickets and average 31. So, his bowling average isn't quite as good as say, Botham's, but his batting average is slightly better. A phenomenal fielder as well. Absolutely incredible, the number of extraordinary catches he's taken. His ability when the chips are down, his stamina in those extraordinary run chases, his ability to dominate an attack, change gear in those innings that he's played is probably peerless, I would say. And obviously then you've got his captaincy to add into that. And his captaincy record, he's 3rd in the all-time list of England captains in terms of win ratio. Number 1, as I said, is W.G. Grace. Number 2 is Douglas Jardine. And number 3 is Stokes with a win ratio of 59.5%. So a fantastic win ratio. And just this guy, this talisman of English cricket, who in my ranking gets 39 points out of 50, which compares with 36 with Botham and 36 with W.G. Grace. And I've given them points for batting, bowling, fielding, influence, as in match impact and leadership and captaincy. So sort of 10 points for each, a maximum of 50, and Stokes gets 39 for that. So he just shades it over Grace and Botham as my greatest England Test cricketer. Go on then,
okay.
Reveal all.
Okay, right. Well, that wasn't who I thought you were going to say at number 1. So I think you've left out somebody who I think has got a genuine case to be in the top 10, not necessarily number 1, but definitely in the top 10. Okay, right. So the first time I asked Chat GPT this, I did talk about kind of like their kind of popular opinion as well, and the folklore of them as cricketers as well. What would people say in general if you ask them this question, rather than the pure hard brutality of stats and performance. And so this is what the strap line across the top is. Before I give you this top 10, then I'll give you the top 10 by brutal data, if you like, the match impact and those sort of things, home and away I was talking about earlier. Okay, so across the long and storied history of English cricket, from W.G. Grace's Victorian dominance to Joe Root's 21st century mastery, greatness has meant different things: skill, leadership, longevity, and the ability to capture the public imagination. Here's a list of the 10 players who, in the context of their eras and influence, best define English cricket. Number 1, Jack Hobbs, the master. Number 2, W.G. Grace, the sports first superstar. Number 3, Len Hutton, modernity's model opener. Number 4, Sidney Barnes, the sorcerer of seam, who took 189 wickets at 16 in his 27 test matches. Jim Laker at 5, mastery incarnate, because of course in that popular imagination he took those 19 wickets at Old Trafford. Number 6, Ian Botham, the archetypal English all-rounder. Number 7, James Anderson, the seam bowling goat. Number 8, Alistair Cook, the Iron Man opener. Number 9, Joe Root, the modern phenomenon. And number 10, because I didn't specify male or female, Rachel Hayhoe Flint, the women's game changer. Okay, so that was a top 10 with those provisos at the top. You know, that kind of like the feeling among sort of popular opinion and the folklore of the game, and that sense that if you went out and asked loads of people who were the greatest players for him, they might put those players in that list. Anyway, that's a rough approximation. Now, when I actually sort of got rid of that and took out, if you like, some public opinion, popular opinion, we had, as I said earlier, a much more sort of brutal statistical approach to impact on the game, home and away, all those sorts of things that we talked about. It came up with this. At number 10, Ian Botham. At number 9, Alistair Cook. At number 8, Ben Stokes. At number 7, Fred Trueman. At number 6, Wally Hammond. At number 5, Len Hutton. At number 4, Joe Root. At number 3, James Anderson. At number 2, Sydney Barnes. And at number 1, Yoz, you've been concentrating on that list. Who's the name missing there?
Yeah.
Botham, Cook, Stokes, Trueman, Hammond, Hutton, Root, Anderson, Barnes. And at number 1,
Hobbs.
Jack Hobbs. Jack Hobbs came in at number 1. So Jack Hobbs, interestingly, came in at number 1 on both of those criteria that I put through Chat GPT. So I'm not saying Jack Hobbs is officially England's greatest ever Test cricketer, because you can have pub debates, club debates, debates on airlines and trains and buses and cars from now until the game stops being played, and you'll come up with a different list and different orders and different number ones. But if you put it through those two filters, Jack Hobbs, the master, comes up as number 1. And the problem, of course, that we have got is that we didn't see him play. The game was very different, but his stats stand up, and who knows what he would have achieved if there hadn't been the First World War, for example, which took out 6 years of his career. It's interesting, actually. You said as you were going through, you said my number 6 is Jack Hobbs, but Chat GPT might have him at number 1. So why did you say that, yours? Just what was in your mind there?
Well, because Chat GPT hasn't got that ability to think out of the box. It only thinks inside the box. And 61,000 first class runs, and however many he made in Test cricket at average of 56, gives him that sort of peerless image in a way. The master. So much has been written about him and how dominant he was, home and away. I'm not surprised, but for me, cricket is about more than just batting. And obviously, he was a phenomenal player. And Bradman defies that evaluation, because he was so dominant that, in a way, however many runs he scored gave Australia the huge advantage. Because he averaged 99. They've got 100 on the board before they've even started, practically. So clearly that does make him the greatest Australian cricketer. But for me, if there wasn't anybody quite as exceptional as Bradman, I wanted a bit more contribution in other areas of the game.
Yeah, I can understand that. So one person you did leave out was SF Barnes.
Yeah,
Sydney Barnes. You had that phenomenal record.
Yeah,
what was the reason behind that?
Well, the first reason was I forgot about him. But actually,
I'm very honest.
But actually, also, I know his record, 189 Test wickets. That's something ridiculous, like 15 or something. He played a lot on matting pitches in South Africa. He was a particular type of bowler that suited those sort of conditions, and I suppose he was just a bit of an anomaly, really. And again, he doesn't fit my all-round game ability, really. So, yeah, I could have included him, but he was a bit of a sort of isolated example of someone who was incredibly good in that particular era. For me, he's a bit of a freak, maybe.
Yeah. So actually, you, in terms of your top 10 and Chat GPT's top 10, there's quite a lot of similarity, isn't there, in terms of who's in it? There's, you had Underwood, for example. Chat GPT had Sydney Barnes, and you had Grace, and it didn't have it in the sort of pure statistical analysis and the different degree of difficulty. But most of the names that you had are in Chat GPT's top 10 as well, but just in a different order. So Ben Stokes was an interesting choice. I mean, I wouldn't have. You made an argument for it. I wouldn't have thought you would have had him at number one. But it's a really interesting question my daughter asked me, because you just think, well, so here's the question, the final question then, and I suppose you've answered it really, is if you had to pick one of those cricketers at their peak to go out into the middle with you, you're the captain, which one of those, the ones at the 10 that you selected and the 10 that Chat GPT selected, which one would you take out into the middle with you?
Well, actually, I might take both of them, in fact, because I think his bowling was so influential and adaptable. Stokes with the ball blows hot and cold. I mean, last summer his bowling was amazing, wasn't it? But he does have off periods with the ball, whereas Botham rarely did. I mean, Botham managed to kind of conjure up wickets from nowhere, and he was someone who could bowl in any condition. I mean, think of that Test match in India when he took 12 wickets in the match, bowling unstintingly in horrendous humid heat, and then made 100 as well. 12 wickets and 100 in the same match in India. So he just had that kind of, you wanted to, a bit like Stokes. He would lead you out of the trenches and you wanted to follow in behind him. The black mark with Botham was he wasn't a great man manager of other players as captain. He was inspirational on the field, but I never felt as captain, or in fact as a teammate, he understood everybody's sort of foibles, and I think Stokes does. Stokes has that empathy that makes him a brilliant captain, and that just raises him that tiny bit above Botham in terms of his cricketing credentials. But yeah, I'd probably say either of them. I'd be happy with either, walking out with either of those guys. I mean, Stokes is a fantastic cricketer who probably hasn't made as many runs as he should have with his batting ability, but he gives so much to the team all the time, and he's had obviously injuries, and he bats, down the order. If he batted at 4 and not bowled so much, he would have made a lot more runs. I mean, 36 batting average is disappointing for a guy of his ability, but he just gives so much to the game.
Okay, Jos. Well, that's it. And everyone will have their own opinions on this. I hope it got you thinking, got you engaged, probably got you shouting.
Made me think you could be quite a good bingo caller, actually. All the 3's 33 or whatever.
Okay. Well, in a later life. Okay, I sacked from doing cricket. Okay, great. All right, Jos. You said that the Women's World Cup is continuing. England's next match is tomorrow. They play against Pakistan. Unblemished record so far. On Friday, we're going to look ahead to England's series against New Zealand, 3 T20s and 3 one-day international calls. So there's a context to it, subtext to it, a build up towards the Ashes with lots of players out in New Zealand using it as a kind of Ashes warm-up. And you'll be able to see the Ashes on TNT Sports. And they are backing our podcast series for the New Zealand series and in the Ashes as well. So please join us on Friday for that. Any final thoughts, Jos?
No, I mean, I think it's been an interesting exercise. I would also say if you want to see these lists and explanations of them, we'll post them both on YouTube and also on our Substack blog, The Crickverse. So if you go to the Crickverse, there'll be a graphic up of those 2 selections that we've made, just to clarify them. And I'll put my point rankings in there as well, to how I came up with that answer of Ben Stokes as England's greatest cricketer, and hopefully he'll thank me for it.
Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Goodbye for now.